one. All right, guys. All right, so we are starting Unit 3. Unit 3, according to AP, they defined it as period 4, but I combined period 1 and 2 together. So we'll just call it Unit 3. All right, so we're going to start this off with better know a president. This is the new president that we get. President Thomas Jefferson. He's a Democratic Republican. Jefferson is this really conflicted person, and we've been with Jefferson for a while now, right? He gave us our Declaration of Independence and fought with Hamilton for a while, right? So we know who Jefferson is. Most historians rank Jefferson pretty high. He's almost always in the top 10, but he is actually pretty conflicted in a lot of ways. So a lot of people don't like Jefferson very much. And the reason they don't like him is because he's a hypocrite. He's a hypocrite. He's really, really intellectually inconsistent on stuff, right? Like he'll get angry and mad about something and then we'll turn around and do the opposite, right? And he does that over and over and over again through his entire presidency and through most of his life, right? And so he's very intellectually inconsistent. His presidency gets dominated by foreign stuff, right? Like he has the domestic priority of turning the US into like a nation of noble farmers where we're all doing farm work, right? That's what he wants, but he ends up getting dominated by having to do foreign stuff, right? The two big foreign things that he does is he deals with the Barbary pirates, and we'll talk about them later on. It's just pirates off the African coast that were attacking American ships. And then the thing he's most famous for, the thing that most people, argue is the greatest thing, is his Louisiana Purchase. So we'll deal with that a little bit later. Today we're not going to deal with that, but it'll come up probably next class period. Okay. For now, I want to deal with slavery, his slavery issues, and his issues with money. So let's deal with his money first of all. On a personal level, Jefferson was always broke. Always. He was born wealthy and he married wealth, right? So he married even wealthier, right? So he had a ton of money. At one point, he was one of the richest men in all of Virginia, but he spends his money faster than anyone. He like burns through his money. In modern day numbers, this would be the equivalent of him spending like $3,000 a day on like food. Right? He would like host dinner parties, where his dinner party would be like $3,000 in a dinner party for like in today's money. Right? He would like invite a friend over and then they would like open up $1,000 bottle of wine and stuff. And he would do that all the time. Okay? So he's always dead broke. When you are always broke, it changes the way you think, right? Like it modifies your brain chemistry. And I don't mean this like a metaphor. I mean it literally changes your brain chemistry. Like it forges new like neural pathways in your brain because poor people are constantly making choices that aren't good, that like don't make sense. Okay. If you like think of somebody that's like really poor and watch them try to solve problems and solve issues that they have, you'll see that they solve, issues A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then they don't even get around to solving problem X, the deal that's the problem. And then they think that they're succeeding, but they're not actually dealing with the main problem. This is something that poverty does to you, right? It actually kind of scars your brain pathways. So Jefferson shows evidence of that kind of thinking. This also leads him into thinking that all rich people can't be trusted and banks are always corrupt, right? He thinks that rich people can't be trusted, banks are always corrupt, which also means that cities are always corrupt because cities are where all the banks are and that's where all the money is. That's where, like, he doesn't understand that world, and so he just assumes that they are corrupt. Right? This is in opposition to Hamilton, of course, right? Hamilton was born an orphan, dirt poor on an island in the middle of the Caribbean somewhere, and Hamilton raises up and Hamilton starts making money, and he makes money, in the finance world and stuff, living in New York City. And Jefferson just doesn't trust it. He thinks Hamilton is just a scam artist, like stealing money and stuff. We have no evidence at all that Hamilton ever stole money. No evidence of it. We do have a lot of evidence of Hamilton investing in banks and making money off those investments, right? But excuse me. But Jefferson doesn't understand that world, right? So this becomes a problem. This also leads into probably Jefferson's biggest issue, right? His biggest issue is his stance on slavery. Let's go ahead and make this big number B. Jefferson was number A. Let's make this number B. Number B, Jefferson on slavery. Jefferson on slavery. Okay, Jefferson gives us the phrase, all men are created equal. Eric, when you hear the word all men are created equal in the Declaration of Independence, what does that mean to you?
Everyone is the same.
Everyone's the same. So you are changing the word men to include, to make it people?
Well, yeah,
Okay. Do you think Jefferson meant that?
probably not.
Okay. How about you, Shivani? What are you thinking? All men are created equal. What does that mean to you, that phrase?
Basically what Eric said, but I don't think Jefferson meant that because he had slaves.
Yeah, we have a real problem here, right? The man who says all men are created equal owned 190 slaves. 190. This isn't just a slave. 190 slaves. While Jefferson is president, he owns 190 slaves. Okay, this is one of his things that are maddening for people. He's so inconsistent, right? He gives us all men are created equal, but owns people. And he doesn't just own people. Let's be clear here, right? I want you to be very entirely clear. Jefferson buys slaves and sells slaves. He buys them and sells them in the White House. He buys them and sells them in the White House. It's not enough just to own the slave. He's buying them and selling them. It's worse, right? Because if you're buying and selling them, then you're contributing to that economy of slavery, right? And maybe I treat my slaves really, really good, quote unquote good, right? Maybe, but then I sell my slave to someone else who, abuses them, right? Jefferson just sells them off to people. He doesn't even know who they are. They just go on auction blocks. Okay. Jefferson, while he's president, he writes this quote right here. Maintaining slavery is like holding a wolf by the ear. You can neither hold him nor safely let him go. Right? If I'm holding on a wolf's ear and I let go of the wolf's ear, what is the wolf going to do to me?
Bite you.
Of course, I was the dude holding his ear, right? If I'm holding the wolf's ear, what is the wolf going to do to me while I continue holding it? He's also going to bite me because he's a wolf and I'm holding his ear, right? The correct answer is don't grab a wolf by the ear, you idiot, right? That's the correct answer, but we don't have that option. Slavery is the wolf. Jefferson writes many, many articles about how slavery is a hideous blot, how it's moral depravity, how slavery needs to be abolished, right? And how slavery is dangerous for the country. Jefferson actually says that slavery is so dangerous that we might even go to war over slavery in the future. Dun, dun, dun. Right? 60 years later, we do. Right? The real solution here is don't grab the wolf in the first place. Okay, slavery gets called the original sin. It's America's original sin. Do you guys know what original sin means? I know none of you guys are Christian, but have you heard that phrase before? Do you know what original sin means in Christianity?
Is it like that? Does it refer to like the first people on earth, how they sinned?
Right, right. So in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, there's a concept of original sin. And original sin basically means that humans are imperfect, right? That God had created us perfectly, but then Eve eats the apple and we all get kicked out of paradise. And ever since then, we imperfect beings are constantly we're imperfect and we're constantly doing bad things. And so we have damaged our relationship with God, which is why we need religion, right? This is what Jews, Christians, and Muslims all believe, that we need faith to repair the relationship with God, right? That original sin is the fact that we're born human and we're born imperfect. Okay? So for a Hindu, that would be dharma, is the closest thing we have, right? It's the concept of dharma, that you're an imperfect person on the pathway to perfection, right? But in this case, slavery is America's original sin. Where Eve eats the apple and condemns all of humanity to sin, England gives us slavery. England is the one eating the apple. England gives us slavery and condemns us to a lifetime of slavery. So we have to reconcile this with being Americans, okay? When the central question of my class is, what does it mean to be an American? We have to recognize that the answer to that question sometimes is Americans are slave owners, right? That's a really uncomfortable truth, but it's the truth. For a significant portion of our history, we're slave owners. And if we're slave owners, it means we're also racist. It means we're white supremacists. It means that we are willing to hurt other people for money. Not just hurt them, damage them, destroy them, erase them from history, and crush them for money. That's a really uncomfortable fact, but it's something we have to deal with as Americans. Okay? Jefferson advocates something called gradual emancipation. This is the phrase he advocates for, right? Or he advocates that slavery needs to go, but slavery should go out in phases. That first you stop the international trade, and then you stop the domestic trade, and then you declare that all slaves born after a certain date are free, right? So mom and dad are slaves, but their kids are free, right? Like he advocates for that. But when Northerners in Congress try to pass it, he doesn't approve it, right? Why won't he approve it?
Because he's disturbed.
Maybe. There's another reason.
Because he has slaves and he doesn't want them to be free.
Right. And what is the slave to him represents money. And if he's always broke, he can't give away his money. Right? Because then he has nothing. One of the darkest examples of Jefferson's slavery, Jefferson and slavery, is the woman called Sally Hemings. Have you guys heard of Sally Hemings before? Yeah, Shivani, who is she?
Is that a slave that he had a child with? Was that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Sally Hemings is a slave that he owned, that he had a long-term rape relationship with. He had a long-term raping relationship with her. He raped her over a course of about 25 years, repeatedly over a course of 25 years. They produced 6 children, 4 of whom he sold. Sold his own children. 2 he released, the 2 that were really light-skinned and could pass as white people. He released them. But the others he sold. A lot of times people who like to think that Jefferson, they like to say nice things about Jefferson, they will try to tell you that Jefferson loved Sally Hemings. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now that it's impossible for a slave owner and a slave to have a loving relationship. That's not how love works, that's rape. Okay, it's the same reason why a teacher and a student can't have sex, because a teacher and a student have a power disparity, right? The student cannot consent to the teacher because the teacher's in charge, right? As long as that power disparity is there, the person on the bottom has no control over the relationship, right? So you'll hear this sometimes when teachers get caught like having sex with students or something, right? And the teacher will be like, whoa, she was asking for it. She wanted it. Whatever, they'll say something like that. Oh, I just couldn't control myself when I saw that 15-year-old girl, right? But the fact of the matter is, she could not possibly have initiated the relationship. She can't. That's not how rape works. Okay? So we need to recognize that this is a rape relationship because he kept her in bondage. He kept her as a slave and forcibly sold her children. Like, I mean, this is not a healthy relationship. Okay? This is one of these things where Jefferson is maddening in his hypocrisy. All right, so let's go to big number C. Big number C is something not related to Jefferson, but is going to cast a shadow over America. It's the Haitian Revolution. Big number C, the Haitian Revolution in Haiti. You guys know where Haiti is? Where is Haiti?
Hispaniola.
It's on the island of Hispaniola, right? In the Caribbean. All right, so do you know what language they speak in Haiti? French. French. All right, so Haiti was a French colony. It's a French colony, and then starting in 1791, from 1791 to 1804, the Haitians gained their independence. Okay, this is very, very important because the Haitians were slaves. This is a slave revolt that creates its own country. It's the first example and only example of slaves taking over their country. Now, if you guys have studied European history, none of you took AP European history, right? Am I correct? Yeah. Okay, so if you've taken AP European history, then this date will mean something to you because this date is also the start of the French Revolution. Okay? There's this perception that slaves are like stupid, that slaves are like animals or something because slaves are mostly illiterate and not allowed to go to school and stuff. I want to disabuse you of that notion, right? Slaves are not idiots. They're not stupid. Okay? When that French Revolution starts happening and the people of France start to overthrow the tyrant and they say, we're going to cast off our chains, the Haitians say, we want to cast off our chains too. You're saying all men are created equal? Well, I'm a man. Am I equal? Right? Toussaint Louverture, he's the guy who starts the revolution. He's like the George Washington of the Haitian Revolution, Toussaint Louverture. He gets killed during the revolution. And then the guy who takes over at the end, the first president of Haiti, is Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Okay, both of these names show up on the AP exam sometimes. They like to put in a question about the Haitian Revolution in the AP exam because they like to they like it for a couple of reasons. So it's influential for a couple of reasons. After you get the names down, Louverture he's the guy who starts the revolution. Dessalines is the guy who ends the revolution. It's actually a pretty cool, like if you learn about the Haitian Revolution, it's a pretty cool thing to learn about. Like there's some cool stuff there. In a world history course, I'd take longer on it, but for US, you don't need all that. But you do need these two things. The Haitian Revolution is important for two reasons. So I say it's important for two reasons. Number one and number two. Number one, it's important because, what was it? What am I doing here?
The two reasons.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now. I'm drawing a blank.
Influential.
Oh, okay. So it's the Haitian Revolution is important because it shows a slave revolt taking over a country, and it shows that slaves can run their own country. Okay, it's also inspirational to other slaves. Okay. Number two, the number two reason why this is really important is because it, was it? It's inspiration to other slaves. It shows them, oh yeah, that's right. The number two reason is because it is such a bloody, difficult war that when Napoleon takes over France, he doesn't want anything to do with colonies. Napoleon wants to get rid of all the colonies. So France, over the course of this war, over the course of this 12-year war, 13-year war, Napoleon reinvades Haiti like 4 or 5 different times, and every time the French soldiers keep getting killed, right? So by the time Jefferson is saying, "Hey, Napoleon, we'd like to buy colonies from you," Napoleon's like, "Oh hell yeah, get rid of him." He's like, Napoleon doesn't want anything to do with him anymore, right? Which is why he sells us Louisiana. Okay, all right. Let's go back to the U.S. now. Big number D. Big number D. Gabriel's Rebellion. All right, we don't know what Gabriel looked like. We don't know what Gabriel looked like. This is an artist rendition, right? So we have no idea. Okay. Gabriel was a slave from Richmond, Virginia, and he doesn't have a last name, but his slave master's name was Prosser, so we usually call him Gabriel Prosser. Okay. So Gabriel is kind of a unique slave. Gabriel knows how to read, and he's a blacksmith. He's trained as a blacksmith, and he knows how to read. Now, this is the moment. This is like a turning point in history for a moment. This is this moment where it looks like things might change, but then they just don't. Right? It's this almost turning point. This is a point where tobacco has become much less valuable. Right? There's just too much tobacco. There's just not a much market for it. Tobacco, the value of tobacco is down, but they also haven't fully invented the cotton gin yet. Right? So they just invented it. It's not out yet. Like it's not, people aren't like, they just invented it and like most people don't have it yet. Like the technology hasn't spread yet. So this is right before the South is going to start making a ton of money. Okay. And it looks for a moment, looks for just a sweet moment. It looks like slavery is going to end because it's just not economically viable anymore. Okay. So the Prosser slave owners are training their slaves on how to do work like blacksmithing. That way, what you're doing is you're sending Gabriel out to work, blacksmith work for someone else somewhere else. You know what I mean? So like he'll travel somewhere and then like make a bunch of horseshoes for somebody and then travel back, and the slave masters will get paid for that. Right? It's like what we would today recognize as like contract work, right? Like contract handyman work, essentially. It's important for the story here, right? Because Gabe is not like a normal slave. Because he knows how to read and because he's a trained blacksmith, he gets sent all over the place in Richmond, Virginia. Well, while he's doing this in 1800, he's also forming a rebellion. He's spreading the idea of rebellion to all the slaves he meets. And he makes arrangements for them to all rise up at the same time. After all men are created equal, aren't they? Right? Gabriel's not an idiot. Slaves are not idiots. Okay? Remove that thought from your mind. Slaves aren't idiots just because they didn't go to school. That's not true, right? Gabriel reads the Declaration of Independence and he's like, this sounds a lot like it belongs to me, right? So he's organizing a rebellion. They manage to steal some guns. They take some guns from their masters and stuff, and they're about to do the rebellion, and then it rains. It's a huge, massive rainstorm, and so they decide to hold the rebellion off for a couple of days because they don't want to do the rebellion in the mud, because they won't be able to escape. Unfortunately, because they have to delay it, some of the slaves get nervous, and some of the slaves tell the slave masters. Gabriel's rebellion doesn't actually happen. They all get arrested. Gabriel escapes for a little while. He runs out to Norfolk, Virginia for a little while, but they hunt him down. They capture him. They hang 28 men, 28 slaves, including Gabriel. He's the last one. They put him on trial and they hang him for the rebellion. Now, what's important here? The important thing about Gabriel's rebellion is that Virginia is so scared of a rebellion that Virginia creates much, much tighter laws. They use this as an excuse to tighten down all their laws. So slaves are no longer allowed to meet up with each other. They're no longer allowed to be out after dark. They're no longer allowed to carry any kind of weapons ever. They're no longer allowed to like form groups with each other. Okay. They also, in a most sinister move, make it illegal for free Black people to interact with slaves. Eventually, Virginia is going to make it illegal for free Black people to do anything, and they're going to start just capturing free Black people again. So Gabriel's Rebellion is an example where this gets much, much stricter. But I want you stay on big number C. I want you to understand that these slave revolts are happening all over the place. These are a regular thing. Okay, during Black Lives Matter protests and stuff, I heard at least 2 politicians say that slavery was good for Black people. At least 2 politicians said that during the Black Lives Matter protests. And they said slavery was good for Black people. They would make an argument. They said, well, it was good for Black people because A, it brought them to America and America was better than Africa. And B, they liked their slave masters, that the slaves liked it. They liked having a purpose every day and a job, right? I want you guys to remove that thought from your head. If you've ever heard people say that, that is absolute bonkers, okay? What did you say, Nika?
Sometimes I hate this country.
Yeah, well, I love the country oftentimes, but we need to recognize this truth, right? It's a really uncomfortable truth to recognize that your family owned slaves in the past. Like it's a hard truth to recognize that you are part of the problem, right? All right, so we have a couple other slave revolts that are going to happen at this time. 1803, we're going to get the slave revolt of Ebo Landing. Ebo Landing. You don't say the G, you say Ebo Landing. You guys know where Ebo people are from? It's a tribal name, it's a language name. Do you guys know where they're from? They're from Nigeria. From Nigeria. Okay, Ebo Landing in Georgia, 1803. This is an example where a slave ship holding 75 Ebo people from Nigeria, today it would be Nigeria, from what is today Nigeria. 75 Ebo people, those 75 Ebo people overthrow the boat captains off the coast of Georgia. Okay, and they overthrow the captains, they drown the crew, throw them overboard and drown them. And then the Ebos are faced with what's going to happen to them, right? Because they know that the other white ships are coming for them. They don't know how to get back to Africa. They don't know how to work they don't know how to sail. They don't know how to work the ship, right? And they know that these white people are coming for them. And so the 75 Ebo people throw themselves into the ocean and commit suicide. It's a mass suicide. They would rather drown in the ocean than be slaves. If you remember the end of Black Panther, when Killmonger, the villain, is being killed, and he says, throw my body in the ocean because I want to be free like the people who threw themselves in the ocean to escape slavery. If you remember Black Panther, the movie, he says that at the end. This is what he's talking about. This is what Killmonger is talking about in Black Panther. Now, Ebo Landing is important because Ebo Landing becomes this like legend. It becomes a legend. It becomes this story with some magic to it that slaves start telling each other over and over again. This is going to become a story that slaves will recite to each other for decades and decades and decades to come. Kind of like the Pocahontas story that has 10% magic involved, right? This also gets 10% magic. According to the legends, as best we can tell in history, the Ebo people just drown. They commit suicide and kill themselves. But according to the legends, the Ebo people pray to their gods, the Ebo gods of Nigeria, right? And the Ebo ocean goddess, she guides them to the ocean where they walk upon the water and they begin to walk their journey back. Sometimes in the story, they walk back home across the ocean to freedom, right? Sometimes in the story, the white people still hunt them down and kill them and drown them, right? Sometimes in the story, they're attempting to walk, but then they become so scared and doubtful that they're going to survive that they lose their faith and they fall in the ocean, right? The story gets changed a lot over time, but it constantly shows this story that they would rather drown than be slaves. Okay. The other one is Manor, Chatham Manor in Virginia. This picture is from 1860, but the building is the same back in 1805. The building's actually still standing today, and it looks the same. Yeah. This is a failed revolt, where this is another failed revolt where I think 5 slaves tried to revolt up. They killed one of their masters, but they weren't able to escape from there, and they get killed themselves. This becomes a warning to all white people that you have to be extra cruel to your slaves. Don't be like the people of Chatham Manor who were nice to their slaves. They were nice, and look what happened to them, right? This becomes this story that you have to be cruel and you have to treat them badly and you have to whip them and beat them and rape them in order to break them. If you look at a timeline of slave revolts, the United States is going to have a big slave revolt every couple of years, the entire time, all the way up to the Civil War. Okay? Don't let anybody ever tell you that slaves wanted to be slaves. That is madness. It's madness. Okay? All right. So I want to go to what the assignment is. Okay? If you go to your, Anika, same thing, just like Shivani. You guys posted just a link. Nobody wants to download this. Upload your picture so we can see your picture. We want the people to see it. Right? Anika, you with me? Okay. Eric, thank you for doing it right the first time. All right, so okay, so all three of you plus Iyengar, all of you guys, the 4 of you guys, are you in contact with her at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so the
Kind
4 of you, I want you to work together on the Gabriel Prosser thing. It's the document in class. I want you to read these documents right here. 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1. These documents right here. Okay, they're pretty short. They're relatively short, couple of pages. Okay, so this is from the trial of Gabriel. This is from the trial of Gabriel. These are some letters from James Monroe to Thomas Jefferson. The translator here wrote Madison, but I assure you it's not. It's Monroe. It's Monroe. Monroe is Jefferson's Secretary of State. He will later become president, right? After Jefferson becomes Madison, then Monroe. So it's Monroe. Some letters here, and then something from a newspaper at the time. This is like a letter to the editor, a letter to the newspaper. Okay. I want you to read those things. They're all about the Gabriel Rebellion and the trial afterwards. And then I want you to answer these questions as a group. Okay. I want all four of you guys to Ananya included. I know she watches the videos. So include Ananya in this. I want all 4 of you guys to answer these questions, and I only want 1 from the group. Okay? So you guys can text message each other, you can call on the phone, do whatever it is you need to do, right? Shivani's going to be hanging out at the Balakrishnan house taking pictures with Rishab. Maybe you guys can work together. Why are you taking pictures with Rishab, Shivani?
Well, I don't know. He was just right there.
Uh-huh.
Her parents are citizens, so they don't get a ballot. So when she came to my house, she was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, take a picture." And she was just
That makes
it worked out.
Did Rishab vote?
He did vote.
He did vote? Okay, good. Good. All right, that's good. All right, so answer these questions. Answer these questions on 1 document for all 4 of you, okay? I want you to share it amongst the 4 of you. Question A has to deal with the first document. Questions B and C have to deal with documents 2 and 3. They're together. They're the letters back and forth. And then the question D is the 4th document. Okay? And these are modified versions of the questions that are on the website. Right? I just modified the questions slightly. Cool? All right. I would like you guys to have this ready have this done and ready for the next Zoom meeting on Wednesday. That way we can discuss the answers to it, okay? Cool?
Cool.
So you guys get a screenshot or take a picture of the questions so you have them. Are we good? Cool. All right. In that case, I'm done. And if you guys are done, do you guys have any questions about anything? Going once, questions going twice. All right. Today is the last day for any kind of late work or makeup work or anything like that. Today is the last day. So if you have anything, speak now or forever hold your peace. If you come to me tomorrow crying and whining that you didn't get something turned in, I'm just going to let you fail. Cool? Are we good? Going once, going twice? On that note,